What happens now, and it happens in streaming probably more than features, but features the same thing. Nobody knows what to do. The stories they're telling are just old movies. Let's do a sequel. Let's do another version of this movie. There's no, and it's not just in movies, but in almost everything. There's no original thinking. The big studios, I mean, they don't want that. They want something that is like something they've seen. Because they don't have an imagination to come up with, to see something that isn't there. I mean, I got Star Wars done mainly because at the same time I was writing the script, I hired an artist to draw pictures of what I was doing because I knew I couldn't describe what it was. It was impossible. But when you see the pictures, you say, oh, I get it. And that was really what made the movie.
Rumors are swirling that George Lucas is seething over Disney's latest Star Wars disaster, the $1 billion Galactic Starcruiser hotel. Reports suggest he never supported the project, and now, after its colossal failure, he sees it as a complete betrayal of the galaxy he spent decades building. Marketed as the ultimate immersive Star Wars experience, the hotel turned into one of Disney's most embarrassing and expensive flops. Packed with sequel trilogy characters like Rey and Kylo Ren and criticized for its shallow storytelling, the experience promised an unforgettable adventure, but instead delivered an overpriced, underwhelming letdown that alienated even diehard fans. For Lucas, Star Wars was never about exclusive, high-priced attractions catering to the wealthy. It was about timeless storytelling, deep mythology, and universal appeal. Watching Disney transform his beloved universe into a billion-dollar misfire must feel like the ultimate insult. Fans, too, are growing disillusioned, feeling that the franchise has strayed far from its roots, prioritizing corporate profits over creative passion. The failure of the Galactic Starcruiser is just the latest example of how Disney continues to fumble one of the most iconic sagas in film history, leaving many wondering if the magic of Star Wars will ever return. The Galactic Starcruiser was a colossal flop, completely overpriced rooms, forced narratives, and a disconnect from the original vision made it one of Disney's most embarrassing failures. It's easy to imagine George Lucas watching it all unfold, seeing fans trapped in a story they never asked for, paying thousands of dollars for something that didn't even feel like Star Wars. For a creator who dedicated his life to making Star Wars accessible and meaningful, this would feel like a personal insult. At the core of Lucas's frustration is the stark contrast between his vision and Disney's direction. Lucas built Star Wars as a mythical saga, emphasizing innovation, deep storytelling, and universal appeal. Disney, on the other hand, seemed to prioritize profit over passion, treating the franchise more like a product to be monetized rather than a universe to be expanded in a meaningful way. The Galactic Starcruiser wasn't about immersing fans in the world of Star Wars. It was about squeezing as much money out of them as possible. For Lucas, who always believed in pushing creative boundaries, watching his creation reduced to a corporate failure must have been devastating. His anger isn't just about a failed hotel. It's about seeing his life's work misunderstood, misrepresented, and mishandled by a company that never truly respected what Star Wars was meant to be. And that, more than anything, is why George Lucas is reportedly furious with Disney over the disastrous Star Wars hotel.
Very own Star Wars adventure. Look.
There she is.
We're gonna call my baby. There's the room. Got a nice bathroom space here. Good closet action here. Oh, we got our safe and our cooling unit.
Not just visitors, but active participants in the Star Wars universe. However, what was meant to be Disney's groundbreaking innovation quickly turned into one of their most infamous failures. The Galactic Starcruiser officially opened on March 1st, 2022, at Walt Disney World Resort, offering a two-night immersive adventure aboard the luxury starship Halcyon, operated by the fictional Chandrila Star Line. The goal was to create a fully interactive experience where guests could live out their own Star Wars story through missions, character interactions, and activities like lightsaber training. Every detail, from the rooms designed to resemble starship cabins to the themed dining and entertainment, was crafted to maintain the illusion of being inside the Star Wars universe. However, the experience was set between The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker, focusing on characters like Rey and Kylo Ren. This decision alienated many longtime fans who would have preferred a setting tied to the original trilogy or prequels. Instead of embracing the rich history of Star Wars, Disney doubled down on the divisive sequel trilogy, a move that left many feeling disconnected. On top of that, the cost was staggering, $5,000 per couple for a 2-night stay. While the concept was ambitious, the execution failed to justify the price tag. What was supposed to feel like an exclusive Star Wars adventure ended up feeling restrictive, expensive, and underwhelming. Guests weren't really free to explore or shape their own stories. Instead, they followed a structured itinerary with limited choices. The lack of true interactivity, combined with the high price and the controversial sequel-era setting, led to dwindling bookings. Despite initial hype, Disney announced the closure of the Galactic Starcruiser in May 2023, just over a year after its grand opening. What was meant to be a revolutionary addition to the Star Wars franchise instead became one of Disney's costliest miscalculations, proving that even the most ambitious concepts can fail when they lose sight of what fans truly want. Guests were meant to be part of the action, using a special datapad accessed through the Play Disney Parks app to choose their own paths, take on missions, and influence the story. Cast members memorized hours of lines, remembered passengers' names, and delivered performances that seamlessly blended into the experience. It was an ambitious and carefully coordinated effort, requiring a high level of precision to pull off. When Disney first announced the Galactic Starcruiser, expectations were sky-high. Fans were promised a cutting-edge, immersive adventure that would take them deeper into the Star Wars universe than ever before. The marketing made it seem like the ultimate dream for any Star Wars fan, a chance to live out a fantasy in a fully realized world. Many imagined exploring iconic locations, encountering legendary characters, and feeling the same magic that made Star Wars a beloved franchise. Given Disney's track record of creating unforgettable theme park attractions, people assumed this would be no different. But things didn't go as planned. Despite the hype, the Galactic Starcruiser struggled to deliver on its promises. The sky-high price tag, the limited appeal of the sequel trilogy storyline, and general confusion about what the experience actually was left many fans disillusioned. Instead of stepping into the galaxy they loved, guests felt boxed into an expensive, restrictive environment that lacked the freedom and adventure they had envisioned. What should have been a groundbreaking Star Wars experience instead became a costly misfire, proving that even Disney's most ambitious projects can fail when they lose sight of what fans truly want.
Reportedly turning its $1 billion Star Wars experiment into an office building. Remember Disney World's ambitious Star Wars hotel, the Galactic Cruiser? You know, the subject of Jenny Nicholson's famous 4-hour breakdown? To catch you up, in 2022, Disney reportedly spent $1 billion building an immersive and fully interactive 3-day experience that put you inside your own Star Wars story. But because of the hotel's high operating costs, the company decided to charge guests $5,000 for it. And it turns out people didn't want to pay that much, and so the whole thing closed in 2023. According to the Wrap, there was hope that that empty hotel would be turned into a, quote, several-hour-long dinner theater type experience. But now the outlet is reporting, based on, quote, several sources, including an individual close to the company, that the Galactic Cruiser building will be used, at least in the immediate future, as an office building. Disney will reportedly use the space for the Imagineering teams working on updates at Animal Kingdom, Magic Kingdom, and Hollywood Studios. Anyway, if you want to learn all about the hotel's wild history, go watch that Jenny.
If there's anyone who would be furious about what Disney did with the Galactic Starcruiser, it's George Lucas. The man who created Star Wars built it on mythology, storytelling, and timeless characters that resonated with generations of fans. But Disney? They took his masterpiece and turned it into a blatant cash grab, an overpriced, underwhelming experience that completely missed the heart of what made Star Wars special. Lucas believed in making Star Wars accessible to all fans, regardless of background or income. It was a story for everyone, a universal myth that could inspire and unite. But with the Galactic Starcruiser, Disney slapped a staggering $5,000 price tag on a 2-night stay, making it clear this wasn't about the fans, it was about profits. Instead of stepping into the expansive and iconic worlds of Tatooine or Hoth, guests found themselves trapped in small, windowless rooms with digital screens mimicking outer space. What was supposed to be an immersive adventure felt more like an overpriced, high-tech escape room. And the story? It wasn't even connected to the classic characters that Lucas poured his heart into. Instead, Disney focused on Rey and Kylo Ren, characters from a sequel trilogy that many fans, and likely Lucas himself, felt had lost touch with the original Star Wars spirit. Lucas always emphasized listening to the fans, understanding that Star Wars thrived because of the passionate community that embraced it. Disney, on the other hand, seemed indifferent, pushing forward with an experience that alienated much of the fan base. The backlash was swift, with many criticizing the hotel's cost, lack of classic Star Wars elements, and restrictive experience. The most damning critique came from YouTuber Jenny Nicholson, whose 4-hour deep dive, The Spectacular Failure of the Star Wars Hotel, has racked up over 11 million views on YouTube. Her detailed breakdown echoed the frustrations of many fans, proving that Disney's attempt to monetize Star Wars without respecting its essence had backfired spectacularly.
Failure of the Star Wars Hotel. And already some of you have skimmed the title and looked at the timestamp and said, yeah, that sounds mildly interesting. I like to hear about corporations face planting in hilarious ways. The video is only 4 minutes and 5 seconds long. I'll go check it out right now. But then you notice that there are 2 extra digits at the end of the time and that this video is actually 4 hours and 5 minutes. Listen to me. That is an indication of how deep this rabbit hole goes. It is fascinating. If you don't know the context, Disney spent something like $400 million building a spaceship at Disney World in Florida. And on paper, it sounds like the coolest idea anybody's ever had. It's a luxury hotel, and as soon as you step inside, the doors close behind you and you are in outer space. All of the windows are screens that show stars and planets going by. All of the staff are in character as people in the Star Wars universe 24 hours a day. It was total immersion in the fantasy. All of the food and drink were sci-fi Star Wars food and drinks. The stay was 2 nights, and during those 2 nights, they would organize a plot line that plays out where the ship gets boarded by the evil empire, and they're looking for an object that was smuggled on board. And you, as a passenger, could play a role if you wanted. You could help the smugglers, or you could help the bad guys. And after just 18 months, they shut it down and took a $300 million write-off. So this video breaking down the whole venture is from Jenny Nicholson, who used to work at a Disney park years ago and understands basically everything about how they operate. She spoke to guests and employees, and she went and stayed there herself and found out that for 2 people, getting the smallest room with the most no-frills basic stay was $6,000. And some of you are saying you do not need to watch a 4-hour-long video to find out why that place went bankrupt. You can say it in 4 words. It cost $6,000. But that is what's fascinating about it, because it's not one thing that went wrong. It is hundreds of little things. And she gets into the art and the science and psychology of selling a fantasy. Because after all, this is Disney's whole deal. They don't make their billions by selling just tangible things. They're not Toyota. They're not selling cars based on, are they dependable and reliable and comfortable? They're selling an idea, a fantasy. They're selling a sense of wonder. And a sense of wonder is so fragile. The tiniest little inconvenience or frustration can break it. And that is what this video is about, because it goes into the logistical nightmare of what they were trying to do here. For example, you heard me say a couple of minutes ago that part of the attraction is that all of the staff are in character 24 hours a day. But of course, these are real life people just working 8-hour shifts. You heard me say that the guests get to be part of the storyline, so it's like a 2-day-long dinner theater thing, but that means all of these staff have to interact with you and do it based on what story you're choosing to play out. Then, if you sit down and think about it, by nature, some guests are going to have a more interesting and more fun experience than others. And some guests are not going to want to do the role play stuff at all. They're there with their kids. They want their kids to get immersed, but they themselves would cringe out of their skin if they were forced to do a 2-day long dinner theater thing. And it's fascinating because so much of it sounds so cool on paper, but in execution, none of it worked. For example, they have this really cool thing where in order to get you into the fantasy, when you show up at the hotel, when you come into the lobby, they take you into this elevator that simulates a shuttle ride up to the Starcruiser. Like it has screens that makes it look like you're going up into space, but of course, in reality, it's just an elevator going up to the second floor. But because they can only fit a few people at a time in that elevator, and because the experience takes a little while to play out, it means everybody else is standing outside in the Florida sun for a long time. If you have any kind of problem with your stay, like say the integrated smartphone app isn't working correctly, or the gameplay elements have glitched out, that requires you to approach the staff and make them break character. Like you can't talk to them like you're in Star Wars anymore. It's one of the most interesting pieces of entertainment journalism I've seen in years because there's so much more there. And you just learn so much about the way Disney operates today, like what their corporate culture is like and how they use influencers to kind of lie to kids. It's really interesting. Again, that's the title. It's on YouTube. Thank you.
She detailed how the hotel felt sterile, forced, and completely disconnected from what fans expected. Lucas must be shaking his head, watching as the universe he created, one filled with wonder, imagination, and deep mythology, has been cheapened into something that feels more like a corporate product than a beloved saga. This is where Lucas's frustration would likely hit the hardest. The Galactic Starcruiser ignored the very foundation of Star Wars, the original trilogy. No Luke Skywalker, no Han Solo, no Darth Vader. Instead of tapping into the rich, nostalgic worlds Lucas built, Disney chose to center the experience around the sequel trilogy, an era that left many longtime fans, and likely Lucas himself, feeling betrayed. Lucas created a universe filled with iconic locations like the Death Star, Tatooine, and Endor, places that fans had dreamed of visiting for decades. But Disney didn't bring those dreams to life. Instead, they forced fans into a narrow, pre-scripted narrative set in a timeline that lacked the emotional weight and depth of Lucas's original stories. It's easy to imagine him thinking, "This isn't the Star Wars I created."
Said, "There's no women in the movies." I said, "Who do you think the heroes are in those films? What do you think Princess Leia was? She is the head of the rebellion. She's the one that's taking this young kid that doesn't know anything and this boisterous, I know everything guy who can't do anything and trying to save the rebellion with these clowns." I said, "She's the hero of the movie." And it's the same thing with Queen Amidala. Even though she has Jedi on her side, she was still the hero prime mover. And they said, "Well, but there's no women, you know." I said, "You can't just put a woman in pants and expect her to be a hero. You know, they can wear dresses, they can wear whatever they want. It's their brains and their ability to think and do and plan and be logistical, and you know, that's what the hero is."
Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room, the idea that Disney's Star Wars became woke. Lucas's original films were always about universal themes: the battle between good and evil, the hero's journey, and the power of redemption. But many fans, and likely Lucas himself, felt that Disney's version of Star Wars started prioritizing modern political messaging at the expense of strong storytelling. Lucas was a master of subtlety. He wove messages into his films without making them feel forced or preachy. But with Disney's Star Wars, and the Galactic Starcruiser experience in particular, many fans felt like they were being hit over the head with social messaging that didn't feel natural to the galaxy far, far away. The focus on Rey, while groundbreaking in some ways, felt inauthentic to many. Her story lacked the depth and struggle that made characters like Luke Skywalker so compelling. For Lucas, who believed in deep character development and mythological storytelling, seeing Rey's sudden rise to hero status without meaningful trials or growth likely felt like a betrayal of the storytelling principles he held dear. Lucas understood his core audience. The fans who grew up with the original trilogy and connected deeply with its timeless themes. But Disney seemed more focused on rebranding Star Wars for a new generation, sidelining the very fans who made the franchise what it was. By centering the Galactic Starcruiser experience on the sequel trilogy, Disney alienated the loyal fan base that Lucas had spent decades cultivating. For Lucas, this must have been deeply frustrating. The universe he created wasn't just about lightsabers and spaceships. It was about community, legacy, and shared experiences across generations. Watching Disney strip away those core values in favor of corporate-driven storytelling likely felt like the ultimate betrayal. Disney's decision to focus on newer narratives while ignoring the heart of the franchise likely left Lucas feeling like his creation had been hijacked. If Disney had truly understood what made Star Wars special, if they had stayed true to George Lucas's vision, the Galactic Starcruiser could have been a massive success. Fans weren't asking for a luxury hotel experience tied to the sequel trilogy. They wanted to step into the iconic worlds Lucas created, to live out the adventures that have captivated audiences for decades. Imagine if the hotel had been designed around the classic films that built the franchise. Fans dreamed of walking through Tatooine, feeling the heat of the Twin Suns while exploring Watto's junk shop or grabbing a drink at Mos Eisley's cantina. Instead of being confined to a sterile starship from the sequels, guests could have wandered through Hoth, experiencing real snow and icy caverns, or felt the fiery heat of Mustafar in rooms and environments that reflected the planet where Anakin Skywalker fell to the dark side. And why stop there? Disney could have created interactive battles with Darth Vader, allowing guests to feel the intensity of the original trilogy's legendary villains. Imagine a pod racing roller coaster where guests choose their pod racer and speed through the deserts of Bunta Eve, or an experience inside the Death Star, where visitors could sit in the Emperor's throne room and witness the tension between Vader and Luke firsthand. These ideas wouldn't just be fun, they would be deeply meaningful, tapping into the nostalgia and iconic moments that Star Wars fans have cherished for decades. The truth is, fans were willing to spend money, but not for an experience that felt disconnected from the Star Wars they knew and loved. If Disney had created an immersive environment that paid tribute to all generations of Star Wars, from the original trilogy to the prequels, they could have attracted a wider audience and built something that kept people coming back for years. Instead, by sidelining the franchise's most beloved eras in favor of the divisive sequel trilogy, Disney turned what could have been Star Wars' greatest theme park innovation into one of its biggest failures.
Trilogy movies, stating that the new corporate bosses got a lot wrong. In an interview at Festival de Cannes, George explained, "I was the one who really knew what Star Wars was, who actually knew this world, because there's a lot to it. The Force, for example, nobody understood the Force. When they started the other ones after I sold the company, a lot of ideas that were in the original sort of got lost. But that's the way it is. You give it up, you give it up." With George being one of the largest single shareholders of Disney, it becomes a rare sight to see him be critical of the company and their films. So this must come as a relief to particular fans. The originals were inspired by westerns, samurai films, World War II, classic cars, and religious meditation practices, whilst the sequels were simply inspired by Star Wars itself. George in the past has kept his opinions very quiet on the sequel films after the
Disney's sequel trilogy movies missed the mark in many ways, and even George Lucas himself subtly acknowledged it. In an interview at Festival de Cannes, Lucas explained, "I was the one who really knew what Star Wars was, who actually knew this world, because there's a lot to it. The Force, for example, nobody understood the Force when they started the other ones after I sold the company. A lot of ideas that were in the original sort of got lost. But that's the way it is. You give it up, you give it up." Coming from Lucas, one of Disney's largest single shareholders, this rare critique speaks volumes. He has generally remained quiet about Disney's handling of Star Wars, so for him to admit that key elements of his vision were lost after the sale is significant. The originals drew inspiration from classic westerns, samurai films, World War II dogfights, vintage car culture, and deep philosophical themes, including religious meditation practices. They were built on a fusion of storytelling traditions that gave them depth and timelessness. In contrast, The sequels often felt like they were simply inspired by Star Wars itself, a recycled version of the original without the same creative foundation. For years, Lucas remained diplomatic about Disney's direction, but his comments suggest that he, like many fans, recognized how far Star Wars had strayed from what made it truly special. Corporate misfire must have been heartbreaking. Star Wars was never meant to be an exclusive luxury experience. It was a saga for everyone, a story that brought people together across generations, backgrounds, and cultures. By setting the Galactic Starcruiser at an astronomical price point, Disney alienated many of the very fans who had kept Star Wars alive for decades. A more flexible pricing model could have saved the project. Instead of charging $5,000 for a two-night stay, Disney could have offered tiered experiences, allowing guests to choose their level of immersion. Some fans might have wanted a simple Star Wars-themed hotel stay, while others could have opted for a full interactive adventure. This kind of flexibility would have made the experience more inclusive, ensuring that all fans, not just the wealthy elite, could participate. By focusing on nostalgia-driven experiences and meaningful content that honored Lucas's legacy, Disney could have created something truly special, something fans would have cherished for years, and something that George Lucas himself could have been proud of. But instead of crafting a timeless tribute to the franchise's roots, Disney's Galactic Starcruiser became one of its biggest failures. The consequences were swift. After just 19 months, Disney officially shut down the Galactic Starcruiser. The building, once envisioned as a groundbreaking immersive experience, was quickly converted into office space for Disney Imagineering, a far cry from the intergalactic adventure fans were promised. And the financial damage was undeniable. Disney reportedly took a $300 million tax write-off after the hotel's closure, a clear sign of just how badly they had miscalculated. For a company that prides itself on theme park innovation, this was a colossal embarrassment. And for George Lucas, watching the franchise he created turn into a corporate blunder must have felt like the ultimate disappointment. Disney's Galactic Starcruiser failure was more than just a financial misstep. It was a glaring example of what happens when a company loses touch with the heart of a beloved franchise. For George Lucas, watching his creation reduced to an overpriced, underwhelming corporate experiment must have been heartbreaking. The big question now is, can Disney regain fan trust? They still have Star Wars, Galaxy's Edge, and popular rides like Millennium Falcon, Smuggler's Run, and Rise of the Resistance, but the sting of the Galactic Starcruiser's failure lingers. Fans remain skeptical, and the disconnect between Disney and the core Star Wars audience has never been more apparent. If Disney wants to move forward, they need to reconnect with the essence of Star Wars. That means embracing George Lucas's original vision, focusing on timeless storytelling, rich mythology, and experiences that celebrate the entire saga, not just the sequel trilogy. The universe Lucas created wasn't just about flashy effects or corporate-driven narratives. It was about adventure, struggle, and a deep connection between the audience and the story. If Disney can recapture that spirit, there's still hope for the galaxy far, far away. But the Galactic Starcruiser serves as a stark reminder. Ignoring the soul of Star Wars in favor of profit-driven ventures is a recipe for disaster. Fans wanted to explore Tatooine, face off against Darth Vader, or race through the sands of Bunta Eve, not be confined to a sequel-era storyline that lacked the depth of what made Star Wars great. What do you think? What would your dream Star Wars experience look like? Would you have paid to step into the world of the original trilogy or the prequels? Let's hope Disney learns from this colossal mistake and gives fans the immersive experience they truly deserve. Until then, may the Force be with you.